I do a lot of container gardening. If I was going to buy soil to fill the containers, it would cost me a fortune. So instead of doing that, I mix my own. It's very simple. I source the material from my own backyard and it's free. G'day, I'm Gary, and in this video I'm going to replenish a tote that I've recently harvested from, and I'll show you how I mix my soil. I grow both in the ground and in containers. I do a lot of container gardening. I have somewhere between 80 and 90 of these 18-gallon totes. Each one of these will hold about 2.5 cubic feet of soil. So as you imagine, if I was to buy it as potting soil, it would be very expensive. So I had to come up with an alternative to fill the containers that I have. In this video, I'm just going to cover my basic soil. I'm going to mix it in a tote. This is the average size of the container that I use. In the first bucket here, I have some of my native soil. Now this is topsoil. It's not topsoil that you would buy in a bag. I harvest it from our garden. We have a couple of places in our yard where I can find good topsoil. A previous owner pushed it around a bit, so it's nice and deep. Our native soil is a combination of clay and silt, so it's high in minerals. In the middle pot here I have wood chips. These are arborist wood chips that I brought onto the property. I started doing that around 8 years ago, and I've got it literally covering the whole ground. So I sifted this as well. This is already broken down. By sifting it, I remove some of the larger pieces. And in this pot here, I have some of my finished compost. This is a combination of chicken manure and leaf mould. I sifted that as well. All these were sifted to 1/4 inch. So I've got 3 basic components that I add to my soil mix. On top of that, I add other things to condition the soil to suit the plants that I'm going to grow in. But this is a basic start. To mix it in, I just mix a little bit at a time. So I'll add a little bit of soil, a little bit of wood chips, and some compost. So it's about 1/3 of a bucket, and I just stir it all in until it's thoroughly mixed. I continue to do that until I've got it all mixed together. So each one of these buckets is 5 gallons. What I end up with is 15 gallons of potting soil. So this is nice and loose, and I've used it to grow a lot of different plants. Our soil here is clay, but it's a mixture of clay and silt, so it's already good to start off with. I wouldn't be able to use it as it is because it clumps up. I've done a lot of trial experiments, and this is the best potting soil that I've been able to make so far. If you're doing it yourself, you're going to have different native soil. Adding the soil from the garden, that gives me a mineral soil. Right now, this hasn't filled the tote to the top, but when I fill the tote, I add other things to it, and that brings it up to the top. I harvested some potatoes just the other day, and this is the soil that was left over. As you can see, it's still good soil. I'll just amend it a little bit. After a year of use, it's still in really good shape. So it still has the mineral soil and some of the wood chips. The level went down a bit, and that was the compost being consumed by the plants. If I need it more acidic, I can add an acidifier because our soil is alkaline. Your soil's going to be different, so what you'll need to do is experiment a bit. It took me a few years to get it to the way that I wanted it, Now I'm happy with what I've got. I'm going to continue using it this way. So if you want to save money, you can make your own soil mix. This will give you a baseline of how to start making your own soil. There's a lot of other things you can add to it that's going to improve it. Sometimes if I've got a batch ready, I'll use leaf mould instead of wood chips. Both will improve the structure of the soil. If you can't get wood chips, leaf mould is a good alternative. You know how I make my soil, so now I'll show you how I use it in a tote. I prefer to fill the totes where I'm going to use them. The soil's going to be very heavy, and if you move them, you're going to run the risk of damaging the totes. So this one here I used last year to grow squash. I could refurbish it, but instead I'm going to put new soil in it. Before I do that, I thought it's a good opportunity to show you how it looks after using it for 1 year. The way the soil settles is going to vary, but in this one, up the very top is the good soil. A little further down towards the bottom, a lot of the silt has settled. It's filtered through the media and settled at the bottom. So this is heavy in silt. It's kind of clumpy. And at the very bottom, I've got the wood chips and the branches. The bottom layer is wet, but it's not swampy. Wood chips are hygroscopic. They absorb a lot of water, but they also allow airflow around them. At the very bottom, I'm finding a lot of worms. If I wanted to, I could refresh this. I could leave everything. I could remove all the soil at the top and leave the material at the bottom. Instead, I'm just going to empty it out and start from fresh. I'm starting with a tote that I've already used. I've pre-drilled the holes in it. I could have used a soldering iron, but what I prefer to use is a drill with a 3/4 inch paddle bit. I've drilled it all the way around. It's about 3 or 4 inches from the bottom. That'll give drainage. So I've got the drainage holes ready to go. The first things I'm going to put in are going to be the pieces of wood. So these are twigs and branches that I trimmed down. So I'll put some of those in the bottom. They'll do two things. They'll help prevent the holes from getting blocked. They'll also retain water. So I'll just put a few of those in. The next thing I put in are the larger pieces of wood chips. These are the pieces that I collected as I was sifting. I didn't want to mix this directly into the soil. So this goes on the very bottom. This will act as a water reservoir. It will also keep the soil away from the holes for the growing season. So I just load that in until it's just above the holes. Once I have that in, then I start adding the soil. I add 1 bucket in. Once I've got the first bucket in, then I start adding some leafy greens. So I've got some grass that I picked. I've got some Swiss chard that started to bolt that I trimmed. I've got canna leaves. I've got tree-collared leaves. The tree-collards are really good to use for compost. So that's going in. And the old leaves of the artichoke, I cut those up and I add those in too. And I just keep layering it. Once I've got that layered and all levelled out, I add the rest of the soil. That pretty much fills it to the top. I've got about half a bucket left. I'll add that once I push it into place. Now that it's full, I just carefully slide it into place. So I'm going to set this up here, and I'm going to plant another squash in this tote. The last of the soil can go on top. Over time this will settle. I've got a little bit more than I actually need for this tote, so I can save that for another tote. I will water this in, and in a few days it'll be ready to plant. So I hope this helped you out. If you have any comments, feel free to comment. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. And with that, thanks for watching, and don't forget to eat what you grow. Bye.